Welcome to the AI Revolution podcast. We're here with Gerry, who's based out of Bali, Indonesia, right, Gerry? Bali, is that right? Or elsewhere in
Yes,
Indonesia?
correct.
Thank you for joining from far away. We'll have to get to Bali one of these days. And we're
Thanks
very
for
excited to
having
have
me.
you on, Gerry. Can you give us a little background, little backdrop on your path to AI, what you've done, what you've been up to recently?
Yeah, sure. Spencer and Jacob, thank you for having me on the show. My background, I think, let's start with entrepreneurship and management consulting, creative agency. So all these three have been shaped me to a builder. I think so in my university years, I had a computer science degree. I finished also a marketing degree. And then I started to work at a creative agency and then transitioned to management consulting and BD. And then I started to work in tech and then created one of in the early years one of the C2C product marketplaces in Asia, but that was too early maybe. Um, and then I started again with the management consulting, and then I transitioned back to now with the AI revolution and it's going, which I believe actually will help a lot in terms of people who are not too technically deep and deep knowledge. So in I think let's talk about like the impact of this technology, right? In terms of when I started to do this process in the agency, management consulting, and then building products, I think if you have the critical thinking and then business acumen, you actually can use the AI tools to actually translate that business plan into reality.
Yeah. Yeah, we've heard a lot of similar things. The AI is just like it's a force multiplier that it can escalate your skills in so many different areas because yeah, just how powerful it is. It's impressive. Sorry, Jake, did you have a question?
Oh, I was just gonna add on to that too. I was gonna say the same thing, Gerry, that I think that is a common thread that AI does not have to replace, it can enhance existing markets, um, existing jobs, existing dreams, businesses, whatever. It can just enhance. It doesn't have to replace things.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah, no, not at
you're
all.
right, and I think in the most important thing is um, the notion that the tech that is available now is actually leveling the playing field. If you think about back then, when let's say the internet revolution, right? This was always talked about with the experts. How is this going to be big as the internet revolution? Actually, the internet democratized and level up the playing field for so many things. For instance, learning is one of the examples, right? Used to went, so I grew up in the UK and London. You used to have like a go to British library and stuff, great books and stuff. But think about the accessibility of this British library. I mean, if you live in these states, you probably have good libraries as well. Think about people who live in third world countries; they probably wouldn't have access to this kind of knowledge. But nowadays,
Yeah.
with the internet democratizing the access to knowledge and leveling up the playing field, all you need is the willingness to go to the search engine or nowadays even like AI search engine and then learn from it. I think that's one of the biggest
Yeah.
things that AI would, or in this case,
Mhm.
LLM, without the API, right? We're not there yet.
Not yet.
We'll get there. But yeah, that's been the thing that just continues to amaze me about AI as well is like how easy it makes it to learn things. Like it just lowers barriers so far that it becomes not worth your time. It becomes much more worth your time to pursue anything, I should say. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, I didn't mean to shake my computer like that. And it's amazing to watch what people have built. And, I'm seeing people who have never written a line of code in their lives, and now they have full-fledged applications, and they've become coders themselves because, like, in the process of building their app with AI, they inevitably run into problems that they have a hard time solving with just AI, and it forces them to kind of apply the skills they've learned along the way and learn. And it's a powerful process to watch. um, and I'd be curious. So I read about your, is it called Tokopocket,
Yeah, right.
the e-commerce app that
That
you
was a
developed?
C2C marketplace. Yes, that's a C2C marketplace that me and co-founder developed in 2015 for Southeast Asia. But I think before we go there, I just want to touch on that your point that
Yeah,
about people who run into problems and then they can solve down with a co-pilot AI capability. Don't you guys think? Don't you guys think nowadays it's even more important to have the depth? And I
yeah,
would say like bring back the craftsmanship, right? Because
yeah,
we live in a time of the day where a lot of people can sort of take it on the surface, like, oh, I'm this and that. But now with like so much tools that can help you actually develop your craft, people will start to can have a separation between who has the real skills and like the depth and expertise versus people who only know the surface. And then they can like
Yeah.
when you keep like ask like a deep technical question. Not doesn't have to be technical question, but like a domain expertise question.
yeah,
And then people are like, oh, I don't know. Like, but I think nowadays you really have to at least have a depth of a domain expertise, and that will separate you from the rest.
yeah.
Yeah.
And to that same point, like carrying on from there, what I've witnessed is people who do have that depth of expertise and yeah, like a domain of expertise, they are able to apply these tools much more effectively because it's like
Correct.
uh, they know what it looks like when when a language model gets something wrong. Like, they know what it looks like and they know how to correct it. And then when it gets it right, they know what it looks like, and it just accelerated their writing process, their coding process, whatever it may be. um
Yeah.
but yeah,
And
no, I
I mean,
agree where it's like, yeah, continue, Jake.
I was just gonna say I mean, it's fascinating too, even if you get less technical with, not like if you go to just art, AI art. I think there was this craze of just like blasting the world with all of the AI art we could possibly come up with, and it's still going on. But it is fascinating when it's even I, who am not super technical with coding, with anything like that, but you're starting to be able to distinguish the real AI artists with those who are not, those who are trying to, on the surface, come off that way. And it's becoming more and more apparent. I think that will become more and more apparent with everything from AI artists to coders to, I mean, even people doing their everyday jobs. I think it'll start to become apparent, like, oh, this accountant is not using AI. You know what I mean? Like, I think that will start to distinguish everyday jobs.
Yeah, and I think to that point, right, um, it is actually a good, like, I think you're in a phase that is actually good to start to learn. I think apart from people at the, you know, big things like um, Google, no one is expert yet. Even they themselves will probably still learning. So I think if anybody tells you differently, apart from maybe some old man or like, they probably just go to English. So everyone is still in a learning process, and I think if anybody who hears this, it's a good point to start, exploring what does LLM look like, bunch of tools out there. I think it will increase your productivity in a good way. Maybe it's, it's not good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To that point, so you've worked on at least one AI product that you sent to us previous to this. Would you like to talk a little bit about some of the development and work you've done on top of AI?
Yes. So let's start with the well, I'd call it like a experiment. There are two phases in this experiment. One is actually last year when I just started before I went to Japan. I came for a long time already, and then I wanted to see what changes, and then afterwards we created this stuff. So I think the background was I realized that actually having GPT can help you a lot, and then I haven't been to Japan for the last 5 years due to COVID and everything open up. And I came back to Japan and I was thinking like, oh, what changes? And then I started to think like maybe I can LLM or like to design an itinerary for me. And then obviously, sure enough, it's not the best itinerary, but hey, it's there. And then I started to think like maybe this actually could be one of the things that save people time when they design itinerary that have specific needs or like specific activities that they want to accomplish, like me. Um, and then fast forward to now, I think there's a lot of travel itinerary AI automation out there. We just tech crunch, I think, a couple months, this month or a couple months ago. The tech crunch actually wrote travel itinerary got acquired by Layla. So that's actually either early consolidation or they understand that there is no or little value in only generating itinerary. So I think that's sort of the background. But in terms of what we do in the experiment, what we want to do is we want to see how it does itinerary building itself, brings value to user, and if it does, what value? If it doesn't, what can we actually help users to make it easier to find it? So just quickly share to you, this is actually the last build that we
Treat. I like the name.
TripAndTreat. Yeah, thank you. So let's say you wanna, this is a classic customer setup, right? Let's say you wanna go to Paris, everybody in Paris. So let's say for 3 days, then I like coffee, and I like the type of thing. So let's find it. Obviously, they will say like a lot of the popular places, look at museum, look at the bay, and then the garden, and oh, let's go. And this is some of I don't
Sweet.
know this place, but yeah, we also, so what we did here, we actually combined between the Google Map APIs and then a GPT generation.
Yeah.
We also have, if you tap on the show, we actually take you to the Google site itself, so you know where it is on the Google Map, and then just Google Mark it or
Wow,
and
that was fast.
yeah,
That generated it pretty
again,
pretty quickly.
yeah, thank you. We use GPT 3.5 Turbo as the base model API, and then the Google Map API and the Google Places. But again, I think a lot of people think I want to draw a separation between people who are really technically sound, like really building like AI tools, versus me or like some of our team who actually built a wraparound using an existing AI tool, right? And again, I don't want to, when you try to come off something differently than you're not, people are gonna smell it really quickly. So I think what we're doing is we're actually building on top of GPT, which actually a valid thing, right? Which is also building. But what I don't want to come across is we're building like an AI tool from scratch, and that would be misleading, right?
Yeah.
there are a shocking number of people out there who seem to think when it's like, oh, I built this on top of AI, like they seem to think like, oh, you built all of it. And it's like, no, 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 no.
Yeah,
OpenAI is running a model, and I can just ask it for answers.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. Yeah,
So
I mean,
again,
it's
But yeah,
interesting.
no,
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Jerry, it's interesting that you're saying this because it's it also is just like a shift of focus. Like your focus with Trip and Treat, right, was like you saw a need and you tried to like kind of build it fast, right? Like fill that need and see if it works. Whereas, which is just like a totally different approach. We actually, I think I remember talking about this with you a couple weeks ago, Jerry, like this quick
Mm-hmm.
iteration approach, which I think AI enables, like that's what's so amazing about it is like you didn't have to go build this from scratch. You know what I mean? Like that user interface
Mm-hmm.
was great. It was quick. You were able to tailor it really quickly, and you didn't have to go code this whole website and build the connection to Google Maps and all these things from scratch. Like you were able to build it fairly quickly, which I think is extremely exciting. That now, because I know if I understand right, Jerry, you're starting to pivot now from Trip and Treat because you were able to do that iteration. You've kind of learned some lessons. What are some things you've learned from this experience with Trip and Treat?
Yes, correct. I think the top two lessons are number one, actually, we believe actually the value of the axis, the value axis should be between commodity and then scarcity, and then free and paid. If you think about it, these are a general framework for pretty much anything. But when it comes to the things that is commoditized, such as AI, or we still call it LLM, like author matching, if you think about the commoditization of the large language model, right, from Gemini, both actually train on the very similar data corpus on the internet. So unless you have your own proprietary data, you're probably gonna have the similar result anyway. And then we test it against TripAdvisor's uh, travel AI generation. We become very close to them. The only difference is they have a better interface, they have better inventory in terms of the hotels and stuff, because that's their own proprietary data, right? So and then this brings the question. So if everything is commoditized and there's no scarcity, what's your value? I think that's number one question, right? And learning from us is actually you cannot deliver unique value in this context and domain if you don't really have access to proprietary data. So for instance, I can show you an example where recently Google was paying Reddit a huge amount of money just for them to say, like, if I wasn't mistaken, because it was in one of the articles in TechCrunch, hey, we got to pay X amount of money for us to be able to spend on your data, right? Because having Reddit data is, I mean, like everybody who's been to Reddit know it sometimes could be a rabbit hole, right? From a subreddit to the subreddit, right? And that they're rich of data, and most of it aren't. So they can train based on that, right? So having proprietary data could be the edge. And we just got to be honest with ourselves. We currently don't have any. So we take a look in the mirror and then think about, right? Look, if we built this and everybody else built this, so what is our differentiation to you, the end user? I think that's number one lesson. Again, value differentiation is very close to commodity. If we only build this.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's interesting.
Go ahead.
That's it's very similar to what I've heard from a lot of the other people we've interviewed, which is that you kind of have to be selective about what app you're trying to build, because there's like you said, like the commoditization is so close to the model already that I can go build a website today, and tomorrow, TripAdvisor or OpenAI or Microsoft might go ahead and clone it because, they have the models and I don't have any special data. It's just my prompt engineering and user interface skills.
Correct. And they probably already thought about it, right? And then in terms of, I understand, work with, when my time at Microsoft, we work with a lot of big companies, and I understand the advantage between the small team and startup and then do something in terms of decision making and delivery, right? In terms of prioritization. I think my time, like, okay, to change one button, you have to go maybe like 2, 3 layers to like the lead of design, and then like the meme said, 1 year later, and then you get approved, right? It's so silly, but that's how it works in the corporate layers. While at startups, you can make quick changes and say like, so we just change this, and then it doesn't work in a week. Within a week, you change it. But exactly like you said, maybe they thought about it, they tried experiments, and they're like, maybe this is not for us. In terms of priority wise, we focus on our core competence, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, they can also make it.
Right. So Gerry, what do you think? How do entrepreneurs compete with these large, companies that do have all of this proprietary data? Like, how do I compete with TripAdvisor? How do I compete with Reddit? You know what I mean? Like these huge repositories, or Google.
Mm-hmm.
Like what do you think? How do I get an edge against these Goliaths?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. That brings to the second lesson, right? The second lesson is, I don't know if anybody who listens to this familiar with the book called Mom Test. That's actually a very, very good book if you want to build a product and then test it early. So I think based on that, and then based on my personal experience, I think the second lesson would be find your niche. And this is, again, over and over again, programs that do the things on scale, that don't scale. Find your niche and then go make 1, 2, 3 users love you, right? I think that's one of the things. Sometimes, even when we build TripAndTreat from the very beginning, I think one of our challenges is nailing our initial customer profile, who, by the way, in the axis of scarcity and commodity, and then free and paid, are willing to pay for the service, right? Because we encounter people who are travelers who said like, hey, how about this tool? Like, yeah, it's a great tool, but like, if you pay for it, they're like, well, I'll probably just do it. Because it's very hard to, this is also one of the things that people tend to forget when they build products. They tend to discard like, oh, my product is awesome, people's gonna use it because it's such revolutionary and stuff, but they forgot like, have you thought about like what tools they used before your amazing product existed? They probably already have a tool to do this job, right? In our case, it's search engine. Even though it might take longer for them, might take like a month to start. If you Google like let's say the trip that we just did, Paris 2 days, it will come up with a lot of searches of like Spencer 2 days, Paris, Jacob 3 days, absolutely Paris, Gerry 3 days, coffee Paris, but you don't know which one is to choose. But again, with LLM now, you get inferred the results. That's the only difference, and it makes the speed much faster.
Yeah, I think that is something that a lot of people can tend to forget, because I've seen a lot of people on on Twitter, on Reddit, and on Hacker News launching all sorts of different little language model projects, and that does hit on kind of a core flaw that I see with a lot of them, which is that they built the product kind of thinking that they were competing against nothing, but they were building in a niche where they already have some sort of established process. So like for the case of like Trip and Treat, we'll just use you guys as an example. Like The people passionate about planning trip itineraries on Reddit already have a bunch of tools that they probably use, and so it's like it I feel like with any new technology, it's almost ironic in how much better it needs to be than like the current status quo in order for people to adopt it. And so
Yeah, I think
it sounds
I
like you
think
may
we're.
have run into some of that.
No, go ahead.
Oh no, sorry, that was the end of it.
No,
What were you
I
saying?
said like that. You saying something that is actually the basics of things, right? The the very basic of things. If your solution is not like in 0 to 1 day time, like in general, if what you're offering me is not so much better than what I have now, I would probably wouldn't spend it with you. Because think
Hmm.
about, I would think a classic example of this would be Paul. I'm one of them. Obviously, like you get the whole um, ecosystem using Apple. Nowadays they have like maybe lower like garden, like a walled garden, but it used to be like you have everything to do with Apple, right? So if you ask me like if you change uh, your phone to Android and blah blah, you're like, well, everything, you know. Uh, I don't know if I want to do that, unless maybe you said, hey, what about there's a new device AI called Rabbit R1. Uh, you guys seen that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Unless, yeah, exactly. Unless you said like, hey, you know what? This is a new device. Then what you experiment with it. Plus, it can integrate with. You said like, oh, cool. I think in that case is what you said. Like sometimes when people think about like they're competing against the company, they really competing against a small set of features within those big corporations. And you
Hmm.
have to make
That's
it.
a really good way to put it. I like that.
That's a really good.
Yeah, I think
Because
that nails it.
because think about all the TripAdvisor thing. It's a review, it's a book. Travel planning is probably just a small part of it, right? A small piece that maybe not the core competence. If you want to compete on that, you have to make a really good experience, not just UI,
Hmm.
but like experience in terms
Hmm.
of delivering, how easy it is, how fast it is. Speed, by the way, matters. How fast it is to generate, and then if it's generated as you thought it would be generated.
Yeah.
So on
I
on the note of speed, oh sorry, continue, Jake.
No, go for it. You're good.
Okay, so on the note of speed, that's something that we've actually heard quite a bit from a lot of our guests as well. And it's
Hmm.
it's funny how much of these themes keep cropping up, and it's something that I've observed as well that, and I think that this probably gets solved down the line with more GPUs in the world, etc. But I think that people can sometimes underestimate how much even just the smallest amount of latency can drive users away from the service. And it's not even that like a user will be consciously like, oh, this service is slow. It's just that deep and down inside, they have this like subconscious clock. And if they don't get what they want right away, they aren't going to be as satisfied with the service and they aren't going to, it's not going to stick for them. Like the thing that amazing, going to Apple products, like the thing that hooked me on Apple products is just how slick and responsive the user interface is. Um, and anytime I go use like a slightly slower phone or a slightly slower computer, I find myself getting annoyed because like there's these little tiny microseconds that over time they add up and they kind of drag our experience down. So
Yeah,
I'd be
exactly.
curious on
So go
did
ahead.
did you do any experimentation with figuring out what was the fastest model? I'm guessing that 3.5 turbo is probably kind of the winner there, but I haven't
Correct.
actually tested, benchmark the speed. So is that what you guys
Yeah.
found?
Yeah, correct. It's exactly like I think if we take a step back, what you just described actually is one of the basic principles that we as humans actually get um, get satisfied easily, but then that becomes our baseline. If you think about it,
Yeah.
like maybe like 20 years ago, when internet connection still have like maybe 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, internet connections have like dial up, and people like just sit there and then like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna wait for this, fine. Now we want everything fast, 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 right? Same with
Yeah.
user interface. I always try to convince the engineer to build like, because I know both sides. I know from the business side, I know from the user side, I know also from the technicality, a little bit on how complex it is, or like how the effort is spent to build something that looks nice and slick, right? The way I communicate this to the engineers is that like, look, at the end of the day, nowadays the bar for the UI is so much higher because what people see on the screen will determine if they want to test or try our product or not. It's as simple as that. It's easy if you go to a website and then imagine like you both having a creative agency, right? And then you have a website, and then your website sucks, and then you think people will want to hire you as a creative agency. They would probably close
Right.
it in like 5 seconds. They're like, oh my god, this looks awesome. And then contrast that with like, okay, it's easy to navigate, and then you have good content and stuff like, okay, maybe they can have a really good value for us as a creative agency, right? I think that the bar nowadays is much, much higher. And then coming back to that speed, right? So two things. Number one, we found out that actually 3.5 Turbo is actually the fastest using the search model, even though I wouldn't say the logic, but the inference would be, activity for inference would be better results because it's trained with better data. The second one, actually, from our survey, specifically to context and domain of travel, people will only stay for less than 8 seconds to know the result.
Wow.
That's crazy. Huh? Consider like
Yeah,
8 seconds.
So-
people are demanding.
Very demanding. Because again, this is coming back to my point. When users try your product first time, your solution, they're gonna compare that to their current solution, which is search engine, which is instant. And then you even like have that 0.000 point something milliseconds, right? You cannot compete with that with 8 seconds. So users are trained on that. They're conditioned to have like, I want my result like now. When I hit that search button, I should have the result instantly.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. This kind of almost coming full circle to what we were talking about at the beginning, where we were making the point, how AI is kind of democratizing so much in the business landscape, the world, and it really is going to start distinguishing those who use AI and those who don't, because everything with a website, UI, the user interface, the functionality, the speed, all these things can be increased and built so much faster using artificial intelligence that I think it's soon going to be almost like a sink or swim. Like if you want to compete, like you have to embrace these tools. It's like someone, the Pony Express delivering mail on their horses. They're like hanging on. They're like, we will not use cars. We will not use cars. And it's like, look, you want to compete, you better go buy a car if you want to compete in this business landscape. It's like you can't just hold on to the past thinking you'll be okay. Like you've got to adapt, and then it'll change. It'll change your life. It'll change your business, everything.
Yeah, and you gotta polish the hell out of everything now, because it's going to be so easy to stand up new applications that the average quality of an application, I think, will go down slightly, and really make the ones with a lot of attention given to the details and the polish, like they'll really stand out even more than they did before, I feel like. I had a question, but I'm blanking on it now.
No, I just gotta add on that before. Oh,
yeah.
2.5. Go ahead.
Go for it. No, go for it. That's perfect.
No, I was gonna say, what Jacob said, right? now the standard is going up as well. Think about, I think there would be a generation after us that actually born in native AI. Think about that because there
Yeah.
are people who are born right now who probably like in their teens, they are like native social media.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
everything they search, they immediately excuse me, their knee-jerk reaction would be go on TikTok. Probably us still use the search engine, but they immediately their search engine is social media. Think about
Yeah,
there would be
I read a really interesting article a few months ago about that exactly. That Google has found themselves losing market share not to DuckDuckGo or any of the other search options, but to TikTok.
yeah.
Which really kind of like bent my mind a little bit because for me, like I would never, that would never be my first thought. My first thought is like, oh, I can go to Yelp, I can go to Google. Like if I'm, if I'm looking for restaurant recommendations, for example,
Right.
I can go to Google, I can go to Yelp, like all sorts of these options. But TikTok, that's kind of out of left field. But um, it's interesting the way that kind of collective social decisions are made without any real like actual public discussion about them happening, just because of the way that trends go, suddenly teens are going to TikTok for searching and instead of Google. And like that's it's going to be really interesting. To your point, Jerry, excuse me, it's going to be really interesting seeing what AI natives look like and what
Yeah.
the future of the web is.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious with going back to like TokoPocket, because I read the little article that you sent us about it, and it was really interesting. I'd be curious if you've had any thoughts on how AI might affect e-commerce and apps like that, if at all, or if you think that that's one area that might remain relatively static.
Yeah, I think on top of my head, quickly, how maybe not LLM, but like AI in general, in terms of machine learning and automation. I think two things coming up on top of my head about how this can affect e-commerce. Number one, machine learning will enable e-commerce C2C or like maybe like a more e-commerce like a direct platform to pattern match better, which means actually I think this actually already happens with Target. And I don't know if you guys read an article about Target actually sending this girl a baby mama kit because she's looking at something at a Target store, but then they predict that she's pregnant even before the whole family knows she's pregnant. And
Totally. I remember seeing
yeah,
this. Yeah.
exactly. But this is like maybe a while back, and I think with the LLM and AI, now it will like put like steroid on it. It will be better. Like let's say I like coffee, like immediately. They're like, hey Jerry, you're in New York. These are the top 5 best coffee, and these are the coffee beans that you should try based on this input. And then on the e-commerce, let's say like hey, I sent you a, we know that you're on the stock of the coffee. Why don't you try this new roasted right now? Get you like 10% discount.
Yeah.
So I think the impact of that is actually more targeted and more conversion. That's number one.
Mhm.
That's on top of my head. The second one is actually would be interesting to see in terms of maybe like AI in general, and then how you create images and stuff. Actually, when people pattern match, I want to see like how they can actually, but if people can try and then see like it's in front of their eyes. So, for instance, let's say you're sold of, I think in Amazon, and then they targeted you for like a new speaker, right? Like Alexa, but better, and then you can sort of project it on your living room, how it looks like, and then look, okay, so this is the optimal optimal place where you can place the speaker, and this is how it looks like. I think that's a possibility of that in the future.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
That'd be really cool.
It might be actually accessible soon with the Vision Pro and
Yeah.
and the Meta.
Yeah, that'd be sweet.
Yeah,
That'd be sweet.
that'll be cool. I gotta play with the Vision Pro one of these days. That'll be fun. Gerry, I'm curious your next phase. Like, what do you think you're gonna do next? I know you've learned a lot from Trip and Treat. What do you think? You don't have to give specifics if you don't want to, but we'd love to hear if you have any ideas, any plans in the works.
Yeah, I mean, like that's great because the first thing we need to find is actually we want to the classic thing, right? We don't want to build the solution or Silicon Valley uses, like we said, SISP, solution in search of problem. We want to find first the problem um, and then solve it, right? Right now, we're talking with a lot of content creators. If any of you listening right now is a content creator, especially in travel spaces, I would love to talk to you and help you to actually get more revenue streams out of your affiliate marketing or sponsorship. So that's number one. If that's really a problem, to validate. And then the second is actually what we want to do is we want to build a community in terms of community and then have a beachhead, right? So let's say, again, coming back to the example, you can't target your product for the whole world to use. Even what's maybe Google or Facebook probably don't have the whole world to use it, right? WhatsApp in certain area, WhatsApp are higher in percentage of use, but in the States, you guys use iMessage most of the time, like text, right? You can't really scale it up until you find your niche and then scale to adjacent. So I think that's the second thing that we want to do.
Yeah, that's great.
That's
so
awesome.
You're very much in the exploratory stage. You're trying to identify the problem to solve.
Yeah, I think on that. We're coming back to the drawing board because we learn from this, and then we actually find ourselves as a traveler, and then we think like, come on, if this is what we offer, I don't think if we ourselves, like, we have to be honest to ourselves, right? If we
Mm-hmm.
if we are the customers, would we pay for this, or would we book anything
Yeah.
like this using this kind of tool? And again, if the answer is no, you probably need to find something else that has more value, like, or
Right.
create something else that has more value.
Yeah. If you wouldn't use your own tool, right? It's like you should be your biggest advocate for what you're doing, for sure.
Exactly. Eating your own dog food, right? I think that's what you have to do, and then and be honest about it.
Yep. That's tough.
When it tastes terrible, it tastes terrible.
Yeah,
But it is, yeah.
exactly.
No, it sucks, but it's also one of those things where it feels good being able to evaluate yourself and be honest, because then it's like you know that you have an action plan, whereas then you can look around at other people who don't have the same kind of self-awareness, and it's like, well, they're lost.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
I've just seen.
No, to your point, Spencer, I think the bias to action is very, very important. You can have the whole tool in your disposal, but if you don't have bias to action, you probably wouldn't get that knowledge of a first-hand experience, because doing something versus just reading about it or like watching about it is two totally different things. Because when you're doing about it, you really know, okay, so this is the details that I know that maybe the next time I shouldn't go there, versus like, okay, I can see something. If you see a form and you can replicate a form, doesn't necessarily you will know what it means or why someone did it, or like what's the benefit of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Awesome.
Lots of lots of good lessons learned, it sounds like, from Trip and Treat for me too. Now I'm learning from it. So thank you for sharing
Yeah, no,
all that. And I'm
this
curious.
is an awesome episode.
Yeah, this has been great. I'm curious, Gerry, if you have any.
Sorry, I think
Oh,
my
you're good. You're good.
my phone. Yeah,
No, you're
go
good.
ahead.
I was just gonna say, do you have any advice for our listeners who maybe are experimenting or thinking about, playing around with AI, who are maybe scared of this AI
Yeah,
revolution that's happening around the world? What advice would you give? What would you say to those people?
yeah. No, I mean, like, I think just like I said before, just get started. It's there. Play around with it. So I think again, that's number one. Number two is think about if you want to solve a problem, what's in the immediate your vicinity, because usually that's supposed to, like from my experience, I want to find places that I visit in Japan, activities that I want to do, and then I don't find a tool for that. I was thinking, okay, maybe I can create something that is valuable for me, and then test it to other people that are like me if they find any value. So number one is bias to action. Number two is try to find a problem to solve that is probably closer than you think. It's not. I mean, like, it sounds easy, but I know it's not. But just think about, like, okay, so the other day when I tried to do X, it's very hard. I wonder if people build a tool to solve X. And I think the third one is be honest with yourself. Like, I think this is the hardest thing to do. Don't look for people who's only complimenting your product, but also look for the people who give you like a constructive feedback. Know that they have best interest for you and want you to grow. Because at the end of the day, how you improve yourself and improve your solution is by getting those feedbacks. If people said like all the good things about our product, I'm just like, it's just gonna stay as is. And then maybe when we get funding and stuff, and blah, blah, 10 years later, nothing happened, and then we actually spend our money, right? I would rather like 3 months. This doesn't work. Let's move on and then take the lesson and then do something.
Yeah.
That's actually our value.
Well, Gerry, is there anything else you'd like to share or highlight that we haven't talked about up to this point?
Maybe last thing, I think nowadays being entrepreneurship, like work for yourself and stuff, being glorified. I think for me, again, you have to be honest with yourself. If you think, okay, fine, and this not for me, it's okay too. Whoever listening to this, if you still have a job, don't leave your job and then, like, I know some content creators and like, this is the time, just leave your job and don't look back, burn the bridges. Well, actually, I mean, like, what if you can start with a side hustle first? Let's still keep your
Yeah.
job. I'm not saying it's easy. That's actually harder because you have to work double shift, right? But I promise you, you will not regret it, because then you think, okay, I'm trying something, bias to action, versus just looking at it. That, okay, if I felt this is not for me, I still have my job and
Yeah.
keep the family in mind, right?
Yeah, that's good advice. You don't have to go fully. You don't have to quit everything and go fully AI or try to start a business and quit everything else. You can
And
start experimenting
then,
for sure.
right, and then when you find maybe like that 100 customers or like 10 customers that love you, and then you decide, okay, now it's time for me to go all in, then you can do it.
Yeah.
But not before
Yep.
you have paying customers that love the product.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Gerry, where can our listeners follow you? What are the best social media platforms for you if they want to follow you, see where you're at in the coming months?
Right, I'm on LinkedIn. That's spell my name. I will put the link after the show to my
Yeah.
LinkedIn, and Gerry is the GERY,
and Herwanto, Herwanto. And my Insta handle is at, and yeah, so just hang on to the show.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll include those in the comments for sure. Thanks for coming on, Gerry.